This is Gerardo Del Ria with my co-host, the world-renowned, world-famous, insightful, smart, balanced, and reasonable Mr. Nick Hodge, and this is episode 3 of Bizarro World. Nick, how are you? I'm going to add to the superlatives every week.
Yeah, that list keeps growing. It's intimidating, and I keep saying that. I'm doing well. We both traveled this week, Gerardo, but some of us had to actually do some work. Yours was for pleasure. I went to a conference in Vancouver. I'm sure we'll talk about it, and I'll ask you about your travels as well, but all going good.
You know, I had to make the trip. My wife got me a couple of passes to the Chicago Cubs convention. It's basically Cubs Disneyland for adult and kid geeks like myself that are into the Chicago Cubs. It was an absolute blast. It was my first time attending. The wife joined me. We spent three and a half very cold days in Chicago, but we had an absolute blast. So go Cubs, go.
Do you get to meet the players face to face? I saw some pictures.
Absolutely. It was really neat. Not only the players, and 99% of the players were there, but the management was there, the execs were there, the owner was walking around, or I should say the owners, the Ricketts family was there, shaking hands and talking with people. It was a very, very amazing experience for me. Me being somebody that's been a Cub fan since I was 6 years old when we moved to Chicago. It was an absolute blast. We had a really good time. Got to meet people that I interact with on Twitter, and it was neat. I got to catch up with a couple of family members as well, and so it was good. Everything but the cold.
Well, it sounds like a good trip. The only people I was shaking hands with were junior mining executives.
Let's talk about it. You were in Vancouver for the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I've made a habit of speaking at that conference for the past couple of years now. It's a good barometer for the sector. One of the largest, if not the largest, resource investment conference. I know PDAC is obviously much bigger, but that's more for the companies really than the shareholder crowd. So VRIC, as it's referred to in shorthand, is really big conference. It was big again this year. I think back of the envelope math, I counted 309 exhibitors. And it felt like there were more rows than ever. I don't know if there were more rows or they just make it harder to navigate like a casino, so it feels bigger, but it felt like there were a lot of companies there with booths, which was a good thing.
Huh. What was the caliber or the quality of these companies?
Well, the ones that I recommend, I think, of course, are some of the highest caliber there, but look, let's be honest. It's the junior mining space. Not all of these companies were quality. Not all of these companies even have an asset, if we're really being honest. And some are just management teams, and some are recycling assets. And that's what you and I try to do, Gerardo, is separate the junior mining wheat from the chaff. You so more than me. I consider myself a generalist, but there was quality companies there. There was mid-tier producers that had booths and quality development stories, companies that you and I both know. And so everybody was there.
Good. Let's talk about some names that stood out on a positive note.
On a positive note, names that stood out. I don't know I think I mentioned Teranga on this podcast. I think Teranga is a fast-growing African producer. I hate to keep hitting the same names, but Atlantic Gold was there. They just took a 9.9% stake in a company called Velocity Minerals. I actually have the Velocity deck sitting right here on my desk in front of me. So obviously Atlantic is a quality company, but I'm digging a bit deeper into Velocity Minerals. They just put out a PEA on the Bulgarian project back in October. It's a nice 1.5 gram per ton grade, open pittable. They've got a processing plant that they contract with third parties, so they didn't have to do that CapEx. And look, clearly the Atlantic management team, who we've talked about in prior episodes, is smart and did their due diligence and liked what they saw in the PEA that just came out. So Velocity Minerals stood out to me. I had good conversation with Morgan Poliquin. You wouldn't believe how cheap Azucar Minerals is, let alone his other two companies, which they continue to drill and are in fact looking for the higher grade portions at depth of the gold copper porphyries thereafter. And some deals coming down the pike. that were exciting, but I don't necessarily want to talk about yet. But assets that new management teams are now trying to advance, and some private stuff that I expect to be trading soon. So one of the good things I think that VRIC has done is expanded the deal room, sort of like Beaver Creek style, right, where you can just have one-on-one meetings. And so they had more seats than ever, I think, in the deal room. And I spent a lot of time in there doing quick one-on-ones. So the conference was good all around, and not just resources, but I, of course, met with some of my other non-resource companies that are headquartered in Vancouver. So always a good trip to get up there.
Fantastic. Let's talk about some of those non-resource companies. We talk a lot of resource companies on this podcast. You say that you're a generalist. I always say that you're an expert at whatever decides to pique your interest in the moment. What else are you looking at outside of the resource space that's interesting to you?
It's funny. I was sat on the newsletter writer panel too. It was moderated by Daniela Cambone from Kitco, and some other astute gentlemen were on the panel with me, like Brent Cook and Peter Spina and David Morgan. And that was one of her early questions as well. And I take that as a contrarian sign that we're not quite out of the bushes yet in the resource sector. If on a resource panel we want to talk about non-resource sectors, but that's just an anecdote for me. So when she asked me that question, the first thing that came to mind for me was crypto. And I say crypto because the price of Bitcoin is now like $3,500 and nobody's making money. We might have touched on it before, but there's companies out there that own data halls or co-location centers where these servers are stored, where the mining machines are, and they're getting machines for free and they can't make money at $3,500 Bitcoin. And so I think that's a very interesting space. There's a lot of major exchanges and banks that are rolling out with new platforms like this week, in fact. So I think the technology is just going to become more entrenched and become more mainstream. And then what really got my contrarian juices flowing this week is JP Morgan came out with a report saying Bitcoin could go to 1250. And so I was like, oh, well, there it is.
It's going to 10? Is that what you're telling me?
I don't know. I just remember the JP Morgan lithium report from early in 2018. And it seems like, these investment banks, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, when they want to buy something, they just put out a report poo-pooing it so they can buy it all the cheaper.
Fuckers. It's funny how that works, right? Hey, let me ask you something real quick. Is there like a Bitcoin equivalent of like the gold silver ratio, or like the golden crossover, or, some of the corny shit that we hear about people reference sometimes? They only reference it when it's like applicable, right? And like the rest of the history doesn't matter apparently when it comes to that stuff. But is there something equivalent for that for Bitcoin? I mean, the cost of production obviously has to be one, but do they have anything yet that they've minted, like the gold silver ratio or like the Bitcoin to Ethereum ratio? Does that exist?
Well, I'm sure it does, and you can find a chart of it. It's nothing I really follow, just like I don't really keep close tabs on the gold-silver ratio. But I have seen some Bloomberg analysts and Bloomberg commentators tweeting things, and I hope this is just in jest. I hope they're not doing serious analysis based on things like this. But like Bitcoin to Tesla ratio, for example, it's like, get GTFO, man. Get the fuck out of here with your Bitcoin to Tesla ratio.
Is that a real thing?
Not in the world I live in.
That's great. That's great. What else is going on out in Vancouver?
Oh God, what's going on in Vancouver? There's a lot of defense deals. So Patriot One was a pretty successful deal. Has got a 100 million market cap or better over the past couple of years, and that's a technology that's supposed to detect threats wirelessly, right? So you put the central unit somewhere at an airport or a concert venue, and it can detect if you have a weapon in your pocket and alert authorities. That technology hasn't been deployed in the real world. I'm not even sure if they have a working prototype, but that's the technology they say they have, and that deal has done well. So you know how it goes. One deal does well, and now there's more. So there's some defense deals coming out. Some I've looked at, some I haven't, some that I think are okay, some that are complete garbage. But they're quite excited about the defense deals. And when I say defense, I mean maybe not necessarily defense, but safety or anti-terrorism or threat detection is probably a better way to put it. And then, of course, marijuana continues to go. Everybody's got a weed deal, either primarily or on the side, it seems like, still in Vancouver. So There it is. Resources, Bitcoin, threat detection, and weed.
All right. Well, let's talk weed, and I'm going to talk our own book here because our Outsider Club in-house expert, you of course being the founder of Outsider Club, I'm going to do the cheap plug for Jimmy Mangle, who writes the Marijuana Manifesto, and you know what? Kudos to him. He issued a report. I want to say maybe a month ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he put a list out of the top 5 takeout candidates, and I think it's been like less than a month. How many of those have been taken out since then?
Yeah, I think 3 of them have been taken out, and he keeps, I know, he keeps supplanting them. So when one gets taken out, he puts another one on the list. And yeah, there's been big deals, just like there's been big deals in the gold sector. We just saw Afria get an offer this week, and remember there was a big short report that came out in December about Afria that cut its value down some 40 or 50%, and here we are a month later, and they're getting takeout offers. So there's been some other big deals as well. Aurora has done some buying. Clearly, Canopy Growth has done some buying, and it's just the natural development of the space. So really, until October 17th, when Canada went legal, everybody had the greatest thing ever, right? Because you could just throw around, how big your greenhouse was going to be and how many kilograms you were going to produce, and sort of like junior mining, right? Oh, we found the target. Now we just got to drill. Well, nobody had drilled yet. Now, post October 17th, to carry the analogy through, these marijuana companies are now drilling. They've had a couple months of sales, and we're starting to see sales numbers comes out, and they have to act like big boy companies, and so you're just going to see M&A, either those companies who aren't able to grow on their own, or companies that have the capital that were able to raise it and have strong checkbooks. I think you're going to start to see them roll up some of the weaker companies or some of the technologies that they need to complement their portfolio, especially now that the U.S. has passed the Farm Bill. So you're going to see increasing hemp deals as well.
Well, Jimmy Mango has been absolutely amazing at calling those buyout candidates early. He's been on this for years. He's not a Johnny come late to the sector. He's not a trend chaser. He's somebody who saw it, caught it early, and has made a lot of money for a lot of people. So no shame in plugging him on this podcast. We'll put a link up if anybody's interested. Get with Jimmy, shoot him a question. Great guy, great person, and has made a lot of people a lot of money. You mentioned the Goldman Sachs and JP Morgans of the world and the short reports they issue when they want to get on the other side of a trade. We were talking cryptos, and it got me to thinking, I remember early this month, if I'm not mistaken, a crypto exchange called CoinCheck was hacked, and they got hacked for something like for $530 million. Right. Wow. And then before the month was out, and I could be off on my time frame, but very shortly afterwards, it was acquired for $33.5 million. And then it was registered with the financial group that basically legitimizes it. And, it got me to thinking, do you think that, these people that are putting out short reports and hacking into these cryptocurrency exchanges, do you think maybe they're on the other side and playing both sides, hiring the hackers and then coming in and just taking over the assets and legitimizing them at a 10th or a 12th of what they're actually worth?
I mean, without concrete proof, I would have to say my gut says that certainly goes on. I mean, that's some of the darker side of capitalism, right? And I would say I've almost witnessed it firsthand in the cannabis space where one company goes on a site visit to see another company, and they feel threatened by what that company is developing. And so what do you know? There's an anonymous call to Health Canada all of a sudden where the other company gets a surprise visit. So, yeah, I think those shenanigans go on all the time. Is that always the reason that something happens? Of course not. But are there people that are willing to play dirty to get a leg up in every sector? Absolutely.
Interesting. Anybody who's listened to the first 2 podcasts has come to realize that it's not just about stocks. We do a lot of social commentary here, some entertainment. On my way to Chicago, I watched a documentary on the Fire Festival, and I would ask you if you've seen it, but judging by our last conversation, you probably haven't. Am I accurate in that assessment?
Every time you ask me if I see something, my answer is normally going to be no, but I've read about it. So I read about the Netflix documentary that came out and how well watched it was. And I remember reading about the debacle that was the Fire Festival when it happened. But go ahead and tell me about the documentary.
Excellent. So my geek brain, as I'm watching this, all I could think about is the junior resource sector, the Fire Festival of Investing. And let me provide a bit of context here. The Fire Festival was organized by Fire Media founder Billy McFarland and rapper Ja Rule. And it was pitched as this luxury music festival. The promotion for it was amazing. The Kardashians were tweeting. Bella Hadid, for those not familiar, beautiful model. You name it. Anybody who was an influencer in the space was tweeting about this. People paid thousands and thousands of dollars for what was supposed to be this exotic concert experience that gave you access to these villas in the secluded island, and you were going to be catered to. And it was like the go-to party of the year, right? And, you fast forward a couple of months later, and people got there and the villas had turned into tents, and there wasn't anyone there to pick people up from the airport, and the luggage was being delivered in cargo containers. And so I'm watching this whole thing and I'm just looking at this like, you got the promoters, you had McFarlane, you had Ja Rule, you had, the celebrity endorsements, you had the promise of this really beautiful experience. And then you had the big letdown at the end. And of course, what happens afterwards, right, is the lawsuits and everything that's kind of followed since then. And I couldn't help but relate the two. Like, is the junior resource sector the Fire Festival of Investing, or am I a bit too cynical? And I tend to be an optimist in the space. I like to point out the bad. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of wealth to be made. I wouldn't be 11, 12 years into this space if I didn't believe that. But, man, there's a lot of glitz and glamour that's not anywhere near what's promised. You just got back from Vancouver. What are your thoughts?
It's murder.
50 Cent put a stop to that shit. You fire away.
There's a lot of hand waving. We talked about one company, Atomera, last week, who was putting out press releases saying, "Oh, these drill results are awesome. They really look like they're highly mineralized. Sulfidation, throwing around all the right words. We think we're in the trend, in the zone, yada yada yada." And then the press, the actual assays come out a couple of weeks later, and everybody's wealth gets cut in half by 40 or 50% because. Well, there's no gold in the assays that looked so visually inspecting. And quite frankly, that's the stigma that haunts the junior mining space. What's the quote from Mark Twain? A gold mine is a hole in the ground with a liar underneath it, with a liar behind it.
On top of it, yeah.
On top of it, there you go. And so when you can't see under the ground, there's a lot of promotion that goes on. And we know that in many cases, a lot of these companies are just promotes. I mean, we call the people that tell you about the stock promoters. That's their job definition, to go out there and drum up interest for the stock and get people to buy it, whether that's going on a roadshow to raise money at an institutional level or talking up newsletter writers to get them to recommend the stock, or standing on stage and giving your 5-minute elevator pitch of why your company is so great. It's all about the promotion business, because none of these companies are, I'm talking about just about the juniors now, none of them are generating revenue. None of them are selling anything. They all have to issue equity to keep the lights on. That is, they have to sell stock to fund whatever it is they're funding. Hopefully that's the advancement of a project, but sometimes it's not. And so, I've talked to people, I won't name names because a lot of people I think are going to listen to this podcast, but I've talked to people just this past weekend in Vancouver who have left the mining space. And they were with successful companies in the past. They were with companies that actually made discoveries, that actually had their companies sold, and still they want to be out of the mining space because they view it as nefarious or underhanded, or the exact words this gentleman used over an oyster appetizer and some beers in Vancouver was, "It's the greatest wealth destroying sector on the market," is the way he put it, and he doesn't want to have his hands involved with it. I didn't really have an end to that statement, but I can certainly see why many people view the junior resource space as the fire festival of investing. And even I feel that way sometimes. I mean, bad stuff happens even with good companies. Look what just happened today. I wrote up a company last month in my newsletter called VRIC Resources, the big Brazilian company. Everything looked good. PE ratio looked good. Cobalt streaming deal in Canada. Mining sector coming back. And look, we were up 5 or 10% in the first 30 days. I put that out, and they had a giant tailings dam breach today at an iron ore mine in Brazil, and the stock's down 9%. And so, of course, bad things can happen to any company in any sector, but it seems there's a lot of bad things and much more risk in the mining part of the market.
Yeah, a little a side note that shouldn't be a side note to that ballet spill. There's 200 people also missing. That's a big deal. That should be first and foremost, I believe. And and look, we participate in the space. I run a website, Resource Stock Digest, that is sponsor based, meaning people pay us a monthly fee to tell their story. And I like to think that we're selective about the stories we take on. I'll defend every company that's a sponsor on that site. And frankly, we probably say no a lot more than we say yes, because we want quality companies to tell their story. If I am a shareholder in a company and that company doesn't believe in their story enough to want to tell it, then I probably don't want to be involved with that company. I'm gonna question the validity of their convictions. So we don't mean to smear the entire industry and tell CEOs don't tell your story, but don't run campaigns where 85% of your budget is going to advertising and the rest is going to travel and G&A. That's not the way to do it. So I just want to be clear that we're not against companies telling their story. We're not against accepting a check to help tell that story, but it has to be reasonable and it has to be on terms that aren't ripping people off on the other end of it, the other end being the shareholder. So that's my rant on that. What else is going on, Nick?
No, well said. There's stories that need to be told. And look, a lot of times it's self-evident. If you look for the things that we write about and we talk about in our newsletters and when we're at conferences, if they have the right structure, if they have the right insider management ownership, then likely, they're doing what's best for themselves and shareholders. And so you just got to do your due diligence, right?
Yeah, and even then it goes wrong. We talked about leading edge materials last week, and they're a company, again, that I thought, and they are ahead of a megatrend, the electrification of everything. They got the Woxna graphite mine in Sweden, valuable asset, replacement cost anywhere between 30 and 50 million, depending on who you ask. And, they just weren't able to communicate their story to the market, or the market wasn't able to receive it the way that it was intended. And the bottom line is that stock for me is down over 70%. Those are real losses for people that followed my advice on that. They had a strategic review last week, a couple of days ago, I believe. They had a management change now. And so hopefully that's a stock that rebounds because it's backed by a solid asset and other assets that frankly are getting zero credit. And hopefully it has a bright future. But sometimes you do all the right things. You have the right shareholders. You have a great asset. They did a lot of great technical work. They're in the right place, and it just hasn't worked out. So the point being, it's tough enough even when you do it right. Don't do it the wrong way, guys. And if you do, don't be surprised if you get named in the podcast.
I stopped by and I spoke to Michael, and I spoke to Mark Saxon, and I spoke to Blair Way, and unfortunately, you've seen the press release. Blair had to step down, but he's still going to stay on in a consulting capacity, and Mark is going to step up and run the company. And it sounds like there was some sort of issue with some Swedish shareholders who had lost a bit of confidence in Blair, and so. It sounds like it was all, I don't want to say friendly, but it sounded like they were going to take care of Blair, and he was going to step aside in the best interest of the company. So you're right. Yeah, hopefully they can get back to it.
Yeah, and let's finish the other side of that. There were people that were upset with Blair, some of the Swedish investors supposedly, and frankly, there were long-term shareholders like myself that were upset with the way the Swedish investors didn't deliver on some of the things that they said they were going to deliver on. And so, there's always three sides to the story, right? The Blair Way side, and the Swedish investor side, and then everybody
And
the truth, right? And so whatever that is, it's a credit to the professionalism of Michael Hudson, Blair Way, the investors, and the team at Leading Edge, that they've handled it the way they've handled it, because I don't think anybody's bad-mouthed anybody else. Everybody just agreed it wasn't working in its current form. So, hopefully 2019 is a better year for them.
What's next?
Great. Funny anecdote. More geek stats. Care to hear them?
I do.
All right. So you were talking about the production cost of a Bitcoin, right? And you were saying that anything below 4,000 really is going to be tough for people to make money. So that got my brain thinking last week. And this is what I do at night when my wife goes to sleep and I'm bored and I can't turn my brain off. So I look stuff up. So I went to the Federal Reserve website and I looked up the cost of different denominations of US dollars. So do you know what a $1 bill costs to print?
I don't.
Okay, and this may be a precursor in the future as to what it's going to be worth. So this might be important, right? Take a guess.
Fraction of a penny.
Oh, no. You're way too pessimistic. 5.5 cents, actually.
Okay.
$5 note, 11 cents. $10 note, 11 cents. $20 note and a $50 note, 11 cents. $100 note, 14 cents. That's the cost of production. So a lot of downside. Just weird stat. Wanted to share.
God, the government can make money so easily, man. They get to print $1 for 5 cents and make 95 cents, and then they get to fuck with the interest rates all the while too, and profit doubly, and then get taxed when we pay them more money. Oh God, it's a good gig.
You know what? Let's talk about the government. It truly is a fucking bizarro world everywhere. Roger Stone just got arrested this last week. The government is reopened, but according to the Trumpster, that's what I'm calling him from now on, by the way, the Trumpster. According to the Trumpster, it's only going to be reopened if he feels like keeping it reopened. And, come mid-February, he might do this again. I was in Chicago for the convention. It just so happened to coincide with a verdict for 3 officers that were accused of covering up and lying to the jury about the shooting of the unarmed teen Laquan McDonald, which resulted in the conviction of the gentleman that fired on him multiple times. When I say multiple times, I mean double digits. That's Mr. Jason Van Dyke. Have fun in prison, Mr. Van Dyke. But the 3 officers that were acquitted of covering up the crime, that didn't sit well with me. And I Chicago officers knew that wasn't going to sit well with Chicago because the streets were lined up with cruisers, police cruisers everywhere. This is what the judge said about the body cam footage that the officers didn't know was on and what it showed, because what it showed was in direct contradiction to what the officers told a jury, right? And so the way the judge excused it, and let's be clear, the officers requested a trial by judge, not by jury. The judge said the officer could have reasonably believed an attack was imminent. It was borne out in the video that the unarmed teen, McDonald, continued to move after he fell to the ground and refused to relinquish a knife. Now, let's be clear. The reason he was moving is because they kept shooting him for 10 seconds after the first shot, and his body kept convulsing. Thoughts?
Geez, it's a giant problem in this country, Gerardo. Priests and cops, I think, are 2 institutions that need a whole lot of change and that people put way too much faith on. And you know me, I have no love lost for the institution of police in this country. I think they get too much credit. I think they protect the bad apples, and so that makes them all bad. And in this particular case, what struck me was the fact that the judge acknowledged that the way in which the 3 cops on trial described the scene was not consistent with what the footage showed, right? So that means they're lying. I mean, that's the definition of a lie, right? You tell something that's not the truth. Well, the video showed one thing. The video is clearly the truth because it's a video of the actual events that happened.
Right. You would think.
The three cops described them in not the truth, but yet they're still not guilty of covering up the crime that he was clearly guilty for because he got convicted of. And so it's just fucking bullshit. I mean, they're just protecting the cops, Gerardo. Call it the thin blue line, call it the blue code of silence, call it whatever you want. But look, it's the reason that Colin Kaepernick is kneeling. It's the reason that there was mass protest in Ferguson. It's the reason people were so riled up about Michael Brown. And until there is widespread accountability, not just by citizens and not just by juries and not just by judges, but from the police themselves, until the police stop protecting their criminal brethren, that institution is not going to improve.
And by the way, if anyone else does what they do, it's a crime. Conspiracy is a crime. That's all conspiracy is. You know somebody did something illegal and you didn't say anything. That's a crime, right? For everyone else, it's a crime.
My blood is already boiling. I mean, this is one of the topics that really crawls under my skin and gets me going. And it's not just Chicago. It's really in every single police department. In Baltimore, they went so far as to carry blacked out BB guns around in their glove boxes, their police cars, to plan on people, and the cops were actually robbing people. And if you look at some of the police interdiction stats where they're allowed to take property from people over the past couple of years, cops have actually taken more property from citizens than robbers have. And when I started on this Bizarro World thing a couple of years ago, that was one of the first things I used to point at it. It's like, look, man, if the cops are stealing more from the citizens than the robbers are, there's an issue here. And I think we're getting to a place where it's getting better. The body cameras have certainly helped. But look, if you can't get convicted for distorting the truth on what a body camera said, then clearly there's still some hurdles to overcome. And I certainly hope we get there as a nation. And again, I'll point back to the good cops. Everyone says, yeah, but it's only one or two bad apples. Yeah, but the good cops, and that good cops is in quotes. If they continue to protect them, then they're not good cops at all.
Absolutely. And the real fucked up part is they do this with taxpayer money. So we pay taxes, right? And then we fund the police department, and then we can't get accountability. And let me be clear, everybody wants good, upstanding police departments that do what they're paid to do. Everybody is in favor of that. I've been in Mexico where there is no rule of law, and I know what it looks like when it's either the military, the cartels, or good luck. That's not pretty, but we cannot continue. And this is 2019 now, everybody. We get the videos over and over and over, so you can imagine the atrocities of days past, right? But we cannot continue to just let this go. What can people do? How can people organize? Nick, we talked last week, and I proposed get a lobbyist, right? When we were talking about equality and having an equal seat at the table. And, I get frustrated sometimes, a lot, on this issue. It's something I'm passionate about. I grew up in the inner city. I spent my childhood in Chicago. I was born in Los Angeles. I have the perspective of Mexico, and, and I was in Alaska for 17 years too. And now I'm here in Austin. I've seen the direct effect that discrimination within our institutions has, and whether it's racial discrimination or income discrimination, it has a real world effect on people's lives, a generational effect. What can people do? How can people organize? You're the founder of the Outsider Club. What do you recommend?
I'm not much of a community organizer, but I will call my representatives from time to time, and I have some solutions, maybe not necessarily on the organizational front, but I can tell you what I think needs to happen in order to help clean up some of the policing in this country. And and first among them is changing the way that they're recruited. I don't know if you've
Yep.
seen the recruitment videos that are used for police, but just Google like small town police recruitment video. And this is for like, Podunk USA, where they've got a police staff of 20 officers or whatever. And their recruitment video is like driving MRAP vehicles through concrete walls. And like, you're going to be on the SWAT team and you got like your legs strapped up with your Glock and you got your MP4 around your chest and you got your night vision goggles on. And it's like, get out of here, man. You guys are going to be like looking for stray cats. Like you shouldn't be recruiting police officers based on extreme SWAT scenarios. I mean, that's just crazy. And while I'm talking
We'll try
about,
to put a link up, by the way.
while I'm talking about SWAT, we need to reduce the amount of times that SWAT is used. I'll put up the SWAT statistics. It's like something like 20 years ago, there was 95% less SWAT calls because we didn't send the SWAT team out for every single thing. And now we do. It's like, oh, domestic dispute, send the SWAT team. Oh, dogfight in the backyard, send the SWAT team. Oh, a kid stole a piece of candy, send the fucking SWAT team. It's like, stop sending the SWAT team. And I'm going to keep going, Gerardo, because I hate this. It's like, and then people want to join the SWAT team. Like the cops that are, when I was a kid, used to sing, walk up to the kind policeman, the very first one you meet, and simply say, I lost my way, I cannot find my street. And you were supposed to pull on their little yellow stripe that went down their leg. And what I say now is walk up to a policeman and try to pull on his yellow stripe and see if you don't get a rifle butt to the chin.
Yeah. Especially if you're in a lower income neighborhood, right?
Yeah. And then the second thing is military. I think all cops should have to be military. We're always asking, how can we get ex-military jobs when they come home? How can we train them to be in the workforce? We got to provide job opportunities to our vets. I truly think that all U.S. domestic police force should have to have prior military service or training. And I say that because the military is trained not to point their weapon at an individual unless they intend to shoot. They are trained not to put their finger on the trigger unless they intend to shoot. And they're generally more restrained when it comes to trigger happiness. And I think that would go a long way in U.S. policing. And then the third thing is hiring some smarter people, for crying out loud. This is true. I know a lot of people don't believe me when I tell them, but there was a case a couple of years ago where this guy was discriminated by not being hired on a police staff because he was too smart and his grades were too good. And he took it to court. And he lost. And so, my argument for that is, I often refer to bad cops as C students with chips on their shoulder, and I think we should just try to get some people who have a bit higher pedigree of academics is all. But as far as organizing, it's tough, Gerardo.
More crazy shit, more Bizarro World. Let's see. The Florida Secretary of State has resigned after photos show him in blackface and red lipstick wearing earrings and a New Orleans Saints bandana and falsies under a purple t-shirt that read Katrina victim, which he had written on it.
I saw it. Let's not do blackface anymore, people, for crying out loud. Get a grip. At least he resigned right away. At least the governor said, look, this is not the kind of stuff I want in my administration. The photo was clearly from back in the Katrina days a while ago, and it resurfaced. And credit to local journos for finding that and getting that huckster out of office.
More Bizarro World stuff. You want to know why I think the government was reopened, at least temporarily?
To take attention away from Roger Stone getting arrested?
I actually think the decision was made before that. Wilbur Ross was on CNBC. He's the Secretary of the Commerce Secretary. And he did an interview, and they asked him, they said, listen, you have over 800,000 people not collecting a paycheck, and this is going to be the second paycheck now. People have mortgages. People have credit ratings at risk. People have, commitments. And do you feel their pain, basically, is what they asked him. And he said, I don't understand why these people just don't go to the bank and just get a loan. The money is guaranteed to be paid back. We're going to sign off on that. So why don't people just go to the local banks and get a loan? And I think that really highlighted the disconnect between elected officials and the people that vote them there. And I hope people remember that. And again, I'm not a partisan guy. I am not just right or just left. I'm more libertarian than anything else in my philosophies. I think both major parties are a lot to blame for pretty much everything. But man, like that's a serious disconnect. So yeah, I don't think it was to deflect from Roger Stone getting arrested. I actually think that they figured out internally, this is going to get worse by the day. And there's no way that we can frame this in a way that allows people to feel good about it, whether they voted for Trump or not.
Agreed.
Great. What else do we got? Can we talk about the fucking asshole kids in Kentucky? Or you got something else?
Just to play devil's advocate, I think Navy Federal was giving zero interest loans. I know that doesn't make it any better.
Okay, I'll bite. What was the turnaround time on those zero interest loans?
I don't know, but they were offering them. It doesn't help the whole 800,000, let alone if you can even qualify for the loan. But I think that's what he was referring to.
Or if you're hungry.
Right.
Right. Or have a daycare bill due.
They should have 6 months savings, 10% in gold, Gerardo.
And you've talked about this in the past. How much of America has that?
None.
Well, not none. I mean, come on, 0.01, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, there you go.
Sir,
yeah.
Less than 1%.
Less than 1%. Yeah, not good. Not good. What else can we talk about? What else was crazy about the last week or two? The kids from Kentucky, the little snug kids from Kentucky, and the dumbass media and dumbass adults that reacted to it, because they were equally stupid, man. Can we talk about that a little bit? Do you have some thoughts? Do you want to provide some context? Do you want me to?
I don't have thoughts. This story has gone 9 ways to Sunday, and I haven't really spent a lot of time delving into it. Not when it first came out, not when everybody said, oh, you got to watch the 2-hour video. No, my take is, well, I don't know. I think, like you said, there's 3 sides to every story, right? So that kid clearly looked like a smug asshole. The guy was clearly approached them pounding the drum. I don't know about his military record. Some have disputed that, but my take would be, why the fuck do we care? Like, just move on. I got other things to do and read about and process in my head than how the media is dealing with this shit.
Yeah, agreed. And this is why I care. I'll give you my 2 cents on it. So the least offensive thing to me, not that I wasn't offended. I think the kid's a smug asshole. There was a video that showed those kids being yelled at by other kids. Let's be clear. There were a bunch of kids out there doing a bunch of stupid shit. The thing that really got under my skin was the way the adults in the media and adults on Twitter reacted to it, because they were either castigating these kids like they were the worst thing since Hitler, or just outright defending these kids like, oh my God, this is what happens when you put a MAGA hat on. And both sides were equally stupid, because to me, the most vile thing about that entire incident was when those Covington Catholic high school kids from Kentucky were yelling at the young lady as she was walking by, called her a slut, and then had the gall later on to say, it's not rape if they enjoy it, ha ha ha. And that wasn't even covered in most media outlets. And that pissed me off, because they want to cover the image look cool, right? You have the native elder, you have the young Caucasian kid with the MAGA hat on. That, that's what sells clicks. That's what sells papers. That's what really gets the attention. That wasn't the story here at all. That was a story, but the bigger story should have been like, who are those little fuckers calling this young lady a slut? Because if you call my niece a slut and tell her it's not rape if she enjoys it, you're going to have a way different situation to deal with than just, am I going to have trouble in the media? Am I going to have trouble getting into college? You're going to have worse problems than that. And the fact that the media didn't really focus on that, it's a damn shame.
Well, of course you blame the adults. Why were those kids there, Gerardo?
There were a group of kids marching and organizing, and there were several groups. There were 3 different groups, if I understand correctly, that were.
Why were the Covington kids there?
Ooh, what was it exactly? Let me try to remember, because again, that was
they were there.
It was the march against. Go ahead.
They were there for a pro-life rally.
That's what that was.
I was talking to my wife about this, or more accurately, my wife was talking to me about this, and Covington is an all-boys school, if I'm not mistaken, an all-boys Catholic school, and they're there at a pro-life rally. What do these kids know about sex and bringing kids into the world. I'd lay money this kid's never got his willy wet in his life.
Technical term, but
B,
yeah, possible.
who do you think set them there? Do you think these kids from this Catholic school were like, oh, let's organize and go to this pro-life rally? Or do you think there was some symbiosis or some coercion from the adults nudging them to go in this direction? Of course we blame the adults. These kids haven't had the world experience, the life experience, the academic experience, the experience in general to form nuanced opinions about these things. These kids aren't allowed to drink. These kids aren't old enough to serve their country. These kids aren't enough to consume alcohol or tobacco. We shouldn't be listening to them on these stupid issues, and we shouldn't be, not that it's a stupid issue, that's not what I meant. We shouldn't be listening to their stupid opinions on this issue because they're ill-informed, and all they do is have heard sound bites from their parents.
Correct. And again, that's what pissed me off, that at the major media outlets didn't focus on this. Find those kids that were yelling slut at this young lady and telling her it's not rape if she enjoyed it. Why didn't they go dig that kid up instead of having the kid with the MAGA hat on say, hey, I was just standing there. Yeah, you standing there, you're kind of a dick, but you're young and dumb, and you probably had some adult guidance on how to be an asshole. That was the least offensive thing of that whole thing. Why didn't they go find the parents of the students that were yelling at this young lady and force an apology out of them, or have a discussion about that? Because that's far more consequential when these, 16, 17, 18-year-olds turn into 24, 25-year-olds at the bar, right? That's what I worry about.
No doubt media has issues. They're getting laid off in droves. I hope your brother's all right.
I think he's going to be all right. I think he'll be good. Let's talk something positive. What do you got on the positive front, Nick? Because, man, there's a lot of other... I could keep going with some of this other shit that I'm riled up about.
We're finally to the positive part. This is turning into my favorite part. First, I got a Bizarro thing because it's been on my list for 2 weeks and we haven't got there. So a couple of weeks ago, we learned that this Twitch streamer, if you don't know what Twitch is, it's a website where you can go and watch other people play video games or stream yourself playing video games, and other people can watch you. Taken off like wildfire over the past couple of years, as has the esports segment. Twitch has some of the highest user engagement rates, some of the highest time on page, and the highest engagement of any website out there. That is to say, when people come to the site, they watch longer than they watch YouTube videos or porn videos or any other videos, really. And so that's saying something. But the guy who was the best Fortnite player made $10 million in 2018 just streaming himself play video games. $10 million. And look, I'm not knocking it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. It's just in my Bizarro thing because, this is clearly a new phenomenon where we have esports leagues and people paying millions of dollars to start franchises. And here's a statistic that came out just today is that U.S. video games in 2018 sold something like $40 million or $43 million, and the U.S. box office was only 11. And so the esports or video games, whatever you want to call them, they were 4 times the market as box office films in the U.S. in 2018. Huh. And I just think that it's something that needs to be talked about, something that should be on your radar. A game that has been around for a while, this farming simulator. I don't know if you've heard of it. I'll throw a link up there. But it's like ultra realistic farming. Like you sit in a combine and drive around the wheat field and stuff, and it looks like a real piece of giant farming equipment. They just started their own league this week with like a $250,000 grand prize. And so all I'm saying is something that should be on your radar because it's something new and it's quickly gaining traction fast.
My brain took that and processed it and said, how do you feel about online gambling and consensual crimes?
What do you mean consensual crimes?
So, if I want to sell you a joint of marijuana, not saying that you smoke it, not saying that I would sell it to you, but if I wanted to do that and you wanted to buy it, how does that make you feel? And I only made the link because I made the connection to esports leagues and online betting, and I could see how this streaming could lead if online gambling is completely legalized, right, federally, and all the states adopt it. I could see how the platform would then be monetized to the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. And then my next connection was, okay, well, if we can just make online gambling legal and it can generate hundreds of billions of dollars, then how do we feel about consensual crime? That's the way my brain works. So let's start with the online gambling thing, and then we'll talk about the consensual crime thing.
I'm for it. You know, I'm a libertarian. That's a victimless crime. You want to smoke weed, you want to sell weed. Look, don't kill anybody in your drug deals, and we're good.
I like it. How about the online gambling?
Yeah, fine with that too. Not much of a gambler myself. Have no problem with casinos though. Fine with it.
Should airports have strip clubs?
Should airports have strip clubs? Can I get in with Miles?
You should.
I'm joking.
I've had a lot of long layovers recently, and I sat there and I was having a couple of glasses of wine. I said, man, it would be much more pleasant if they just had like a strip club.
Yeah, no, I don't see why not. It's like Las Vegas has the slots. Why can't we get some strip clubs?
I like it. I like it. All right. That's all I got on that front, Nick. You've been doing a killer job with highlighting some. We talked about the whales before. Last week, you had some other anecdotes and some positive things. I like to end this podcast with a smile. I think that's the right way to end everything, right? Instead of angry and pissed off at the cops and the government and all these dumbasses in the media. You have anything for us on that front this week, Nick?
I'm still not going to get there, Gerardo. I got to ask you one more thing.
Come on,
the first week we talked about, you said you were going to explain why you would let Rihanna sing you the ABCs, but we really have never gotten any more color on that.
We're not there yet. We need a bigger following for that one.
All right, so we'll wait for Rihanna. Got it.
Yeah. We got to get in the 4 digits. When we start getting 4-digit views, right? I think we're up to like 100, couple of hundred. Give me 1,000 and we'll start talking about it.
Got it. All right. Here's what I got positive this week. 3 things. First, you should know that YouTube TV is now covering 95% of the TV markets in this country. Before it was only like 80% or something. Why that's important? Well, if you want to cut the cord, you've ever been thinking about cutting the cord, the thing that's been holding you back is that you couldn't watch the local affiliates, so you couldn't watch sports, right? Everybody says sports is the holdback. Well, what Google and YouTube have done is they've contracted with all 4 affiliates, Fox, NBC, CBS, and ABC in 95% of the TV markets in the country. So you can subscribe to YouTube for $40 a month and cut your cord and still get all your sports. That just happened this week. I thought that was exciting.
Huh.
What else? What else is exciting? Oh, so a lot of people think that charities mismanage their money or that their money never gets to, what they intended it when they originally donated it. People have beefs with even big organizations like the Red Cross. So I wanted to highlight 2 charities that are doing real things and getting things done and are advancing their mission. One, I read this week, the Michael J. Fox Foundation. You all know Michael J. Fox has had Parkinson's for nearly half his life. At this point, he's 57 years old. And he's not trying to improve the quality of life of people with Parkinson's. He's not trying to help people, individuals with Parkinson's. His only mission is to find a cure. So, right, this isn't palliative care. This isn't improving quality of life. This is cure the fucking disease. And so that's all the money goes toward. And this week they had a giant breakthrough because they've been seeding pharmaceutical companies. So this company that they seeded a couple of years ago with $1.3 million finally got a drug approved this week for Parkinson's. It doesn't cure the disease, but it's an inhaler that takes away the symptoms. And so huge stride forward for Parkinson's research and medicine, and kudos to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for putting money actually where it needs to go and delivering results. And then the last charity I'll mention is one that John Oliver has been on for a couple of months, and it was actually an expose he did that helped this get big, but it's called Rest in Peace Medical Debt, RIP Medical Debt. And what this organization does is, instead of allowing debt collectors to buy wholesale medical debt and then hound you on your phone like a debt collector does to pay it back, what they do is they take donations and they buy the wholesale debt for pennies on the dollar, and then they just immediately retire it. So whoever owes the medical debt doesn't anymore, with no adverse effects to them, and the debt just gets retired. They've done this for I think $500 million of medical debt already. So fantastic stuff going on there.
I love that. We gotta definitely put links up. And you know what? I'm gonna answer your question because I'll come up with more silly shit to say in future podcasts, Nick. So I'm gonna give you the short answer. The short answer is Rihanna's accent makes me tingle. And there's 26 letters in the alphabet, so it would last longer than an average song.
I like it. I like it.
What do you got going on this weekend, Nick?
So it is the last weekend of duck hunting in the great state of Washington. I will be down by the pond hunting those ducks, and my mother-in-law is coming into town with her sister, so my wife will have her mom and her aunt here. We will spend some time with them. How about you?
Excellent, excellent. So just here in the next couple of days, we'll likely be at our favorite burger joint. Shout out to Hop Dottie's in Austin. The kids love that place. The wife and I love that place. My youngest wants to go see the Mary Poppins movie, so we'll likely do that on Sunday. And I'm a huge fan of Emily Blunt. I think she's an amazing actress, so that should be fun. And you know, when we're not doing the family stuff, hopefully the wife and I can get into some adult things and maybe some tingling. Maybe some Rihanna. So that's the plan.
Maybe some airport strip clubs.
They don't exist. I've looked them up. I haven't looked in Dubai, but I just think it's, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, who would complain? Well, not everybody would like it, obviously. But if you had a 3 and a 4 hour layover and you could have a glass of wine and you could watch the game and, relax and sit back and partake in the views, I don't know very many people that go in there and have unpleasant experiences.
No, that's not what they're meant for.
That's I've never been in a place where people just got out of there and said, "What is this? I can't believe this is what's going on. I'll never be back." Never happened, but that's just my take. I know different people have different opinions on strip clubs and things of that sort, but if you like a glass of wine, if you like a nice drink, you're doing that at the airport anyway. Why not? Why not? I think it's a good revenue generator. You don't need a lot of space. It's not a lot of overhead. Seems like a no-brainer to me.
Like it.
So that's it. That's all I got. Man, a lot going on. We got to save some for last week. The government's back open. We haven't talked a lot about global issues, and I want to focus in future podcasts a little bit more on that. So maybe that's something that if anybody's got suggestions on things that are near and dear to their heart, all jokes aside, shoot us something on Twitter. What's your handle on Twitter, Nick? At Nick C. Hodge, I believe.
Nailed it.
Perfect. And I think mine is at RS Digest. So yeah, shoot us a message if you have a question. I think we're both pretty blunt and open with our opinions and our takes. It doesn't mean they're intelligent or will provide any kind of insight that's helpful in your life, but we'll give you an opinion for whatever that's worth. So that's it. Episode 3 of Bizarro World. Mr. Nick Hodge, thank you for your time, sir.
You got it. We said we were going to do a featured stock of the week. We'll have to do it next week, and they'll have to come listen to us again.
Let's do it next week.
Enjoy your weekend, sir.